When I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I quickly noticed a trope in the community of the white belt that thinks they should already be a blue belt. While some of the more experienced Jiu-Jitsu players can get frustrated by these people, I think most are understanding and have some level of empathy for them. With that in mind, I'm going to try and cover the best explanation I have for why this is common enough to be a meme. The subject in question can be applied to all areas of expertise, not just Jiu-Jitsu. David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger conducted a study which demonstrated an interesting phenomena, then published a paper about it in 1999 with the following self-explanatory title: Unskilled and Unaware of It, How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments. In this study, subjects were given a series of tests on the topics of logic, grammar and humour. After each test, they were asked to estimate how well they had scored. Almost all predictions were wrong, showing that people rarely have an accurate perception of how much they really know. The main takeaway was that the lower somebody scored on the test, the more inaccurately they predicted their results. In the bottom 75% of results, on average, people overestimated their scores. If we look at one of the graphs cited in the study, we can see that the participants are split into 4 quartiles, from lowest scoring to highest. For each quartile, we can see the average of what they scored and the average of what they estimated their scores to be. The most important thing to note here is the difference between the two, demonstrated by the green lines on this graph. As we move up the chart to the highest scoring quartiles, we can see that they still overestimate their performance, but the difference starts to become less pronounced. Interestingly, the top quartile seem to overcorrect and on average underestimate their scores. This difference is shown in purple. The study demonstrated that the least knowledgeable people had the most overconfident perception of their performance, whilst the most knowledgeable people had the least confident perception of their performance relatively. My understanding of this is as follows. When you start to learn a new skill, you know that there is more left to learn, but you don't yet understand quite how much. As you learn more, you begin to think that you perceive the complexities of the subject and what mastery looks like. But even then, you likely don't know enough to see the whole picture. Even those who have mastered the subject still have more left to learn, but the more advanced the knowledge, the less likely it is to be shared, especially in a competitive sport. So at this point, learning becomes more about exploration and experimentation. The masters understand that their preconceived notions could possibly be challenged, and this likely leads to the doubt or the perceived lack of confidence shown by the most knowledgeable. While writing this script, I found a video from the channel Psychology with Dr. Anna, where Dr. Anna Udin shares a quote from Albert Einstein. "The more I learn, the more I realise how much I don't know." Dr. Anna has this to say on the subject.
I think that the more a person learns about a field or just the world in general, the more they realize that it's important to be humble. Even when I first started this channel, when I was still in grad school, I spoke in a lot more absolutes and extreme language than I do now. And that's because over the course of experience and gaining wisdom, you realize things are not that black and white.
I will link the full video in the description below. I think a good way to frame this is as being confidently uncertain. You're sure that what you know might be susceptible to change under scrutiny. If we map the Jiu-Jitsu belt colours onto the graph from the Dunning-Kruger study, white belts would represent the least skilled group, which makes them the most likely to overestimate their abilities. All of this is a dual burden on the white belt. Referring back to the name of Dunning-Kruger's paper, they are both unskilled and unaware of it. The next graph I want to show you is often referred to as the Dunning-Kruger graph, and whilst it's not from the original study, it attempts to demonstrate the journey of somebody mastering a new skill. It shows how most people's confidence changes over time based on how much they have learned. The initial peak, dubbed Mount Stupid, demonstrates the massive overconfidence of the beginner. I would like to think that the BJJ belts map onto the graph like this. When starting a new hobby or developing a new skill, it's useful to think back to this graph to give ourselves some perspective, reminding ourselves not to get too overconfident or overly pessimistic, but keeping that perspective over the long and difficult learning curve is easier said than done. Here's my favourite version of this graph. We can see the master looking back at his own era of undue overconfidence and lamenting, "Incompetent fool, that one." Personally, I try to remember that it's okay to be incompetent while learning, but I try not to be the fool. Easier said than done, I still prove myself to be the incompetent fool from time to time. It's almost inevitable. There's an idea that comes from Stoic philosopher Socrates in Plato's dialogue, Apology. "I know that I know nothing." This is a modern paraphrasing of what he's actually quoted as saying, but Socrates reflects that his wisdom lies in recognizing his own ignorance, especially compared to others who claim to know much but have not sufficiently examined their beliefs. This idea reminds us to approach learning with humility, recognizing that what we think we know might be incomplete or subject to challenge by deeper understanding. Referring back to the Einstein quote and Dr. Anna's comments on it, people who deal in absolutes and state their beliefs as certainties likely haven't yet learned how uncertain our knowledge on deep topics can be. To hammer the point home, someone who is certain that they deserve their blue belt already can't perceive that there might be qualifying factors that they do not yet possess. Recently, I held a survey via social media, asking if people thought their blue belt promotion was overdue when they received it. 60% of people said yes, showing that it's common for people to feel this way, but around 70% of people said that in hindsight they think that it came at the right time, demonstrating that as they learned more, they gained a more accurate perspective of their journey. The sample size of the survey was small with only 44 replies, but at least the results lined up with the Dunning-Kruger study. If we asked Dunning-Kruger how to stop inflating self-assessments of our competence, they would tell us to become more competent. But this doesn't really help for the duration of our journey towards mastery. What does is, I know that I know nothing. When making assertions about what you know, try to keep an open mind and try to take an approach where you're open to questioning what you've already learned. Masters and experts tend to make adjustments to their speech that show that they're open to being wrong. You don't need to be an expert to do this. Speaking confidently on a topic that you know very little about is a good way to telegraph to others that you're in the incompetent 4 stages of the learning process. Going back to the graph, the next segment, often referred to as the Valley of Despair, is where the realization of the depth of the topic and the heights of our naivety become apparent. As we know, BJJ is a tough sport, and people can give up easily. Personally, I think it's beneficial for people to enter this area and begin their upward trend before they get their blue belt, as this shows that they have moved past the point of overconfidence and still haven't given up, despite the harsh reality of what the road to mastery really looks like. In the Jiu-Jitsu community, we have a saying, white belts are friends, not food. Jiu-Jitsu can be taxing on the body and taxing on the ego, so much so that people don't stick around for very long. We want new Jiu-Jitsu players to stick around and to come back, both because we want more people in our community to train with, and because gyms need memberships to stay open. I think ideally, we want to keep new members in a sweet spot between humble and confident throughout their journey. As such, more experienced people often try to soften the process for newer members. This can be a delicate balance. Someone having too easy of a time can start to think that it's thanks to their aptitude and not down to the kindness and grace of their more experienced training partners, getting cocky and thinking they're further along than they really are. Too humbled, and they start to feel downtrodden, feeling like they're not cut out for the sport and eventually quit. We should be grateful for any time our training partners give us, especially people with more experience. Higher belts are likely not learning much from rolling with somebody new. Any roles they share with us are likely for our own benefit. Try to pay this forward with others as you gain experience and new people start to join your gym. Show appreciation to the people that help you improve and show humility when you experience success. I've been in the process of producing this video since before I started participating in the gi at the start of 2024. Despite my efforts to change, I still struggle with perfectionism. Getting this video published is a sign that I'm improving, as previously it wouldn't even see the light of day. I've been a 4-stripe white belt for the last few months, and putting this video out didn't feel right. In December, I got my blue belt and I felt more comfortable getting this done. I love Jiu-Jitsu and I currently feel like I will be a black belt one day, no matter how long it takes. My long-term goal is to compete in amateur MMA, but short-term, my goal is just to keep doing what I'm doing, training BJJ and Muay Thai while I lose weight. For anyone struggling their way through white belt, keep at it. BJJ is one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done and I've met some incredible people doing it. Don't worry about the belts, just keep showing up and trying to get better. Stressing about what colour is around your waist is only holding you back and diverting your focus. I've spent my life learning things the hard way, falling prey to the Dunning-Kruger effect and making a fool of myself. If somebody's linked you this video, just know they're not judging you, they're probably just trying to help you prevent becoming the incompetent fool. If you like the video then you know what to do. If you pressed on subscribe then that will be cool. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you have any feedback then please let me know. You learn less from a win than you do from a loss. 2 things left to say, thank you and us.